The American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, was primarily a domestic conflict between the Northern Union and the Southern Confederacy, but it had international dimensions that are often overlooked. Chief among the foreign powers observing the war was Great Britain, then the world's foremost empire. Historians have long speculated, could Britain have changed the outcome of the American Civil War? While Britain never intervened militarily, its economic power, naval strength, and diplomatic maneuvers had the potential to tip the balance, had it chosen to do so. Britain's interests in the conflict. Britain had deep economic ties to both North and South. British mills depended heavily on Southern cotton, and the textile industry employed millions of workers. Meanwhile, the Union was a major source of grain, and Britain had strong trade relationships with Northern manufacturers. Moral considerations complicated matters. Britain had abolished slavery throughout its empire in 1833, and public opinion was largely anti-slavery. Supporting the Confederacy, whose economy relied on enslaved labor, would have been politically unpopular, particularly among Britain's working-class citizens and abolitionist movements. Yet geopolitics often override moral concerns. The Confederacy hoped to leverage King Cotton diplomacy, believing that British dependence on cotton would force London to recognize Confederate independence or intervene against the Union blockade. Points of potential British intervention. Several moments during the war raised the specter of British involvement. The Trent Affair, 1861, the U.S. Navy intercepted the British mail ship Trent and captured 2 Confederate diplomats. Outrage erupted in Britain, and war seemed possible. However, cooler heads prevailed, and the diplomats were released. Blockade running and commerce raiders. British shipyards built vessels like the CSS Alabama that wreaked havoc on Union shipping. Though officially neutral, Britain's tacit support of Confederate raiders strained relations with Washington. The Cotton Famine. The Union blockade significantly curtailed cotton exports, causing economic hardship in Britain's textile regions. However, alternative cotton sources, e.g., Egypt and India, and humanitarian appeals kept Britain from breaking the blockade. Diplomatic recognition. Confederate leaders desperately sought recognition from Britain and France, believing it would legitimize their cause. Yet, Britain withheld recognition, largely because Confederate victories were not decisive enough to make support politically viable. What if Britain had intervened? Had Britain intervened, whether diplomatically, economically, or militarily, the war might have taken a very different course. Naval intervention. The Royal Navy, the most powerful in the world, could have broken the Union blockade, allowing the South to export cotton and import weapons. This might have revitalized the Confederate economy and prolonged the war. Diplomatic recognition. If Britain and possibly France had recognized the Confederacy as an independent nation, it would have dealt a severe blow to Union morale and might have encouraged other European powers to follow suit. War with the Union. A full military conflict between Britain and the Union could have stretched Northern resources thin. With Union forces fighting on 2 fronts, against the South and British forces in Canada or at sea, Confederate armies might have found greater success. However, intervention would have come at a tremendous cost. War with the United States could have endangered Britain's holdings in Canada, disrupted Atlantic trade, and embroiled Britain in a long, expensive conflict with an increasingly industrialized and populous opponent. Moreover, supporting a slaveholding Confederacy risked severe political backlash at home. While Britain had the power to influence the American Civil War, several factors, including economic pragmatism, moral opposition to slavery, and the risks of military entanglement, ultimately kept it neutral. Had Britain intervened, the Confederacy might have secured its independence, reshaping not only American history, but global geopolitics as well. Yet by staying out of the fray, Britain allowed the Union to prevail, leading to the abolition of slavery and the preservation of the United States as a single nation. History hinges on moments of choice, and Britain's choice to abstain from intervention remains one of the pivotal decisions that shaped the modern world.